So in this video, I'm gonna show you why productivity is a stupid concept and what to do instead. In fact, since ignoring most productivity advice, I built a startup from scratch and sold it to a publicly traded company for millions. Then I built another multi-million-dollar SaaS company from scratch. And I can assure you that productivity had nothing to do with either outcome. So what do I focus on instead if I'm not focused on being more productive and getting more done? I learned the hard way when it comes to success in business and life. The key is leverage. When I launched my first business, I was obsessed with productivity. I thought that the more productive I was, the more my business would grow. And that's true to a certain extent, but there's definitely diminishing returns. In fact, at one point, I was writing 2,000 to 3,000 words a day and running 2 companies at the same time. So I was trying to increase my productivity to get the most output I could every single day. And I was doing all the stuff you probably heard of before: intermittent fasting, meditation, exercise, sleep hacks. Yes, that stuff did help me be more productive, but it didn't really move the needle on my business. And the reason for that is because I learned 2 important things from trying to be more productive. The first is you'll hit a ceiling on how productive you can be, which I'll get into later. Second, you're gonna get burned out because humans aren't meant to be these machines that just produce stuff every single day. And that's what happened to me. I hit a ceiling on my productivity and my business has stopped growing. And then I started to get burnt out because I was doing all this stuff without growing. And I felt really frustrated and burnt out trying to just produce all the time. So I decided to switch things up. And instead of focusing on my productivity and what I could do, I started to focus on leverage and how I could use leverage to grow my businesses. Everything changed. I was able to sell my company for millions, and then I launched a software company and grew that to millions from scratch. If you're an entrepreneur that wants to grow their business, productivity is one of the last things that you should be worried about. That's because when you focus on productivity, you're focused on how much you, as an imperfect human, can produce every day. And yeah, if you're a total mess who can't get anything done and can't focus, increasing your productivity from 0 to 1 will help you quite a bit. But going from 1 to 5 is not gonna make a big difference because there's only so much that you as a person can actually churn out. And you start to see diminishing returns really quickly. For example, let's say that you start meditating and you increase your productivity by 10%. And then you start doing ice baths or whatever the hot thing is for another 10%. So now you're at 20% more productive. And even if you were able to continue stacking these things together, the most you could ever be more productive is 2 or 3x. And that's assuming you don't get burnt out from having to stick to this routine every single day. And even if you were able to double or triple your productivity, you're still one person. There's only so much you can actually do. In fact, Elon Musk is a great example of this. You never hear about his productivity tips or him doing ice baths. He doesn't do any of that stuff. He wakes up and eats donuts in the morning. He checks his email all the time. He's like the anti-productivity guy. What's his secret? It's because he's not doing all the work. He's not building spaceships. He's not building cars. He's using leverage to get those things done. And that's the thing that makes Elon Musk so successful, is that he's constantly building points of leverage, whether it's technology, intellectual property, or even entire companies. He's always building leverage. How much him, Elon Musk, wakes up in the morning and actually accomplishes is somewhat irrelevant compared to the leverage that he's building. So I've talked a lot about leverage. Let me show you some real life examples of what I'm talking about and how I've actually used leverage to grow multiple businesses. The first point of leverage that's probably the best is code. Code is so cheap that it's essentially free once you get something coded up, and it runs 24/7, doesn't get sick, and doesn't get demotivated or burnt out like a human. In fact, that's the main point of leverage at my SaaS startup, Exploding Topics. Most other companies in the trend business do manual stuff. They write trend reports for clients, or they write just general trend reports and sell them. Most people in the trend business do custom reports. They have a client reach out to them and say, we're Procter & Gamble, we want the biggest food trends in the space. So they hire a bunch of analysts to write up those trend reports. This is super time consuming and doesn't really have a great point of leverage because you're relying on people to do all the work. Instead, we have an algorithm that automatically finds trends all the time. So when it comes to productivity, I could get up at 4 a.m. and write all these custom reports for people, or I could have something coded up and do it automatically, basically forever, and sell that instead of selling my productivity and my valuable time. The code is a much higher point of leverage than me doing the work, even if I'm super productive. Media is another great point of leverage. For example, my last company was an online education company in the marketing space. Literally 90% of people in SEO and marketing sell services of some kind, whether it's consulting or an agency, or they work in-house at a company doing SEO. It's really hard to get leverage with those business models because when you have an agency, you're basically selling labor to other people. Now, yes, you're selling expertise too, and that's sort of a point of leverage, but at the end of the day, someone's hiring you to do work that they don't want to do. So yeah, when I created Backlinko, I knew that I knew a lot about SEO, but I knew I didn't want to run an agency. And I didn't want to do consulting because there's only so much, even if I was super productive, that I could do in terms of consulting calls every day. So I decided to sell online courses about SEO and content marketing. And that's a great point of leverage because you create the course once and you can sell it an infinite number of times. Now, like I kind of mentioned before, one of the worst point of leverage is labor, hiring other people to do the work. Why? Because compared to code or compared to media, it's expensive and complicated. Plus you have to hire and manage people, which is a huge pain. Now, obviously I've built several companies and I've hired dozens of people over the years, and I like working with my team, don't get me wrong. But the idea is if you want to maximize leverage, hiring a bunch of people is probably not the best way to do it. Now, even though hiring people has its limitations, it's still better than you trying to do the work and eke out 5 to 10% productivity boost by meditating or taking ice baths. In fact, there's probably an hour or even more every day that you're spending working that you could outsource to somebody else. Now, clearly there are other points of leverage too, like money and capital can be a point of leverage. That's the whole VC world and the whole investing world. That's how Warren Buffett got rich. VCs get rich from investing in startups. So I'm not saying I am like the leverage expert and I know everything. I just wanted to share my experience of how leverage has helped me grow several companies from scratch, as opposed to increasing productivity, which can only get you so far. And that's really the point of the video. Obviously if you want to be more productive, if it's something that you enjoy doing, by all means do it. But if you want to grow your business, you being more productive is probably not the secret to growth, because you're a person and there's a ceiling on how productive you can possibly be every day, as opposed to leverage like code and media, which is pretty much infinite. So now I would like to hear from you. Is there anything you're doing productivity wise that you think is like a game changer? Do you think productivity is basically a huge waste of time, or do you think it's something that is super important for growing your business? Either way, let me know in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next video.